Hi, I'm Self-Care Big Sis, and this is my podcast. Let's take a deep dive into your personal growth journey and create an environment where you can transform into the best version of yourself. With the help of your big sis, of course.
Hello everyone, this is Self-Care Big Sis, and thank you for listening to my podcast. In this episode, I'm here to remind you that you are enough. I'm here to uplift you and inspire you and give you this positive message and affirmation that you are enough. And I feel like in society, there are a bunch of things constantly telling us that we aren't enough. So that's why I felt the need to make this podcast, because I feel like it's pretty obvious, like, of course I'm enough, but everyone has this voice inside of them that's like, maybe I'm not enough, because there's constantly things in our society just telling us that we have something wrong with us, like we're not the correct weight, or our skin isn't there all the way, like we have acne, therefore we shouldn't be able to socialize or something, or like we didn't go to college, so we didn't do enough for a job. Like we're constantly put in these like situations where other people are judgmental about us, and then we're always wondering now, like, am I enough for this thing? Am I enough for this? And I feel like people have this voice in their head, whether it's like to an extent of like it being a dominant voice or just like a small voice. And in this episode, I'm here to like completely debunk this insecurity that society has placed on us. And I just want to say that it's not your fault that you think like this. It's just the way that the world has raised us. It has raised us to make us think that we are not enough. But the thing is, your worth is not determined, or should not be determined, by what you have achieved. Your worth should just be determined on existing. If you're here, you are enough.
Hello everyone, this is Self-Care Big Sis, and I have a special announcement for y'all today. So I published a book called Self-Care Big Sis's Coloring Workbook for introspection and an aid for your self-love journey. And this is something that I've created for my viewers and for my listeners to aid them on their self-love journey. So there are coloring pages, and it's a really fun book. There are journal prompts, and there are motivational quotes, and this is a book for you to really get to know yourself and get to know what it takes for you to work on your self-love journey and for you to really understand what it means to love yourself. So I'm always trying to come up with new ways to heal the world and give back to my community. So I have written y'all a book, and I will link this in the description of the YouTube video. That is the one you're watching right now. And I will link it in the show notes if you're on the podcast. Check it out, everybody. Thank you.
I feel like part of the reason why we question if we're enough, and we kind of have this hierarchical idea of how we fit into society, is the education system, because ever since a young age, we're like told we either pass or we fail. And then we have this like idea that life is a pass or a fail, or you can get an A in life or you can get a B in life, and A is better than B. And then we get into the world and school is over and grades don't exist anymore. And then we're still acting like they exist, even though they don't. Then it's like we don't have any other sense of like judgment and perception and belonging in the world, other than these like ideas of like grading ourselves really harshly and being super hard on ourselves. But you don't have to worry like that anymore, because you're not being graded for being alive. You can just exist now. I feel like part of the reason people have this feeling of judgment and am I enough is because of school. We were put in these classes and we were graded on how well we did on assignments, and if we didn't do well on an assignment, we wouldn't be able to move on to the next thing, or we'd get punished. So there's consequences to not being enough. If you're not enough, then you don't get to go to a football game. If you're not enough, then you don't get to go to the choir concert and sing. You don't get to be creative. You don't get to express if you are not enough. And I feel like that puts almost your worth of how smart you are over creativity, and I feel like it shouldn't be a choice. And I feel like you shouldn't let your grades define you, and you shouldn't let your status define you, because it exists above grades in the world outside of school as well. And when you get into a working world, it's the same thing. Like if you are higher up, then people will say that you're more important than someone else. But I feel like no one is more important than someone else. Like, yes, people have different roles, but the world will literally not function if not every role was present? Do you know how many trash bags would accumulate if we didn't have garbage men? Arguably, garbage men are more important to our society than a CEO of a company we've never heard of. And I feel like that's why you can't compare two different jobs. Do you know how hard it would be to eat out if we didn't have food service workers or chefs or all these blue-collar positions? We wouldn't have homes if we didn't have carpenters. We wouldn't have running water if we didn't have plumbers. We wouldn't have internet without the people who do internet stuff. And so I feel like everyone is just necessary and everyone is enough and everyone is valuable to our society in order for it to function. So the people who are putting themselves over someone else based on how much money they make, it's a wild concept to me, because I'm like, first of all, how can you put yourself above someone else? And second of all, if you didn't have other people, you wouldn't be able to have all this money in the first place either. So you got to be grateful for these other people for existing so you could be where you are, because everything is kind of set in this place for a reason. You shouldn't beat yourself up for being a part of this reason. Be grateful that you're here. Be happy with yourself. Realize that you are an important part of society, even if you don't really think so. I am just going on a rant here at this point, because there's this trope that parents don't really want their kids to be musicians, like super ambitious parents. If a kid wants to do music, the parents always like, no, be a doctor. Do you know how sad the world would be if we didn't have music? And yes, there is a surplus of musicians right now and in general, but I think these small music artists are so inspiring, and I don't think they should ever give up, especially if it's something that makes them happy. And I think they're enough as they are. They're enough because they create, and their worth should not be determined by their success or how many people see them or how much money they have. Their worth should be determined by if they're happy and if they're doing what they love. And I feel like society has lost that. We've lost the ability to just be content as we are and be content because we are doing what we want and doing what we love. And we're looking for this outside validation. But in reality, all the validation in your life should come from within. It should come from what you want and what you like, because you are the most important person in your own life, because without you, you wouldn't exist. I don't get why all these other people in your life, you're making their opinion so important to you when your opinion is the most important opinion to you. And I'm not trying to say that you should ignore other people's opinions, but I'm just saying when other people are making so much noise to where you question your own self-worth and are you enough, you don't have to agree to their noise. You don't have to go by their rules. You know yourself the best, and you have to decide what you're going to be, and you decide if you're enough, and you are enough, okay? You are enough for simply existing. You are enough because you're here. You don't have to be a certain way to be enough. You're enough right now because you are beautiful and life is beautiful and you are lucky to be here. There is a very small chance of you specifically being born, and you were born, and that's a miracle, and that's enough, and that's beautiful and gorgeous and fantastic, and you shouldn't be questioning if you're enough because you're here, and that's what life is all about. That's why life is so beautiful. It's because you're here. You shouldn't be questioning if you're enough, because it is enough to simply exist.
Hello everyone, this is Self-Care Big Sis. Remember to follow all of my social medias. If you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel already, subscribe to Self-Care Big Sis. Also, follow my Instagram, Self-Care Big Sis Official. My TikTok is also Self-Care Big Sis Official. Also, follow this podcast, and if you're watching this YouTube video, please like this video and leave a comment on what you think, or be nice to someone else in the comment section, or tell me what I should do next. Also, if you haven't already, please rate my show on Spotify. I would love to hear what you all have to say, and I appreciate each and every one of you, so thank you so much for being here. Support the community, be a part of the family. I have so much information to offer you on each of my pages. It's a different type of information, so I recommend going through all of that and checking it all out. I'm excited to have y'all join the fam. Thank you.
Also, if you think in a hierarchical manner of I'm only enough if I have this thing. Like, yes, it's good to have your goals, but the whole way you should accept yourself and you should be happy with how you are. Because if you're always reaching for the future, you're never going to be in the present and you're never going to be happy. I guess you might be happy, but you'll never be satisfied. And I feel like the satisfaction comes from living in the present and just kind of having that whimsical present nature of kind of one of those old ladies from the cartoons, or if you haven't seen a cartoon like this, there's like an old lady, she lives in the forest and she's kind of crazy. She just walks around and she's happy to walk around and everyone's kind of like, what is this lady? And she's just dancing. She sees the ocean, she waves her arms around. She's just dancing, she's just there. She just exists. She doesn't question if she's enough. She's zen. She's just happy to be in a forest. She's like, I'm in a forest. Heck yeah. I feel like that kind of present mindset of like, I'm here, I exist, I'm beautiful, here I am. That is such a healthy mindset when it comes to facing challenges. And that's an important mindset switch to have if you want to consider yourself more satisfied with how life is. Because if you're constantly chasing like, what am I going to do at 3 p.m.? What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do in a year? What am I going to do in 5 years? Like your brain isn't present. You're not conscious of who you are right now. You're just gonna look back in the past and be like, wow, I had all these things and I didn't even know I had them because I was too busy thinking about things I'll do in 5 years. And then 5 years later, all the things that you used to have are gone and you didn't even get to enjoy them. So being present just lets you enjoy your life. If you just accept yourself as you are, be present, and then still go towards your goals, that's a more satisfied way to live your life. Also, I feel like a lot of life has phases and a lot of life is temporary and the phases are temporary. It's a lot of ups and downs, lights and darkness. So if you are constantly looking for the external to determine your self-worth, it's gonna always be fluctuating. And so you just have to be satisfied with how your values are, how your heart is, and that's enough. Just be a good person and that's enough. Be helpful to society, be giving, be loving, love yourself. Have this light within yourself. Be happy with that. If you need a sense of pride, be proud of how good of a person you are. Don't be proud about your job or your money because that comes and goes. And don't be proud of you have a certain person, you have a certain outfit, because what happens if you wear that outfit outside and suddenly the outfit gets stained? You can't wear it anymore or it gets ripped. You can't wear it. And then your life is ruined. It's shattered because your whole worth was determined by that outfit. You see, it's not a stable way to live if you are constantly chasing this external validation. And I mean, there is enough stuff for you to survive doing this and be happy. And I'm not saying stop being happy with the things that are in your life, because materials can be very powerful. They can be a good way to measure success if that's how you measure success. But I'm just saying that if you are wanting to be satisfied with who you are as a person and your identity, you gotta have it from your core. It has to start within, and if you have it within, it'll radiate inside of you and you will feel like you are enough and other people will see it, and you will have this energy about yourself that you are so strong, you are so powerful, you are filled with love and light. If you have that energy about you, and even if you don't have that energy about you, that's enough. And I feel like it's so valuable to work on your inner work. It's just as important as your outer work. And I feel like society ignores your inner work. Sometimes they just think like you need to work hard and that's all you need to do. But I feel like there's this inner world that's not addressed. You need to be kind to yourself and fill yourself with positivity and light. Get rid of all this darkness inside of you and heal your trauma. Because if you don't heal your trauma, you're going to pass it on to someone else. With everyone you interact with, it's an energy exchange. You exchange how you feel inside. It's like your hearts can touch each other depending on which person you meet. And if your heart isn't in a position to where it's healed, you could potentially hurt someone else. That's why I think it's so important to do this inner work on yourself. Anyway, I got into this tangent about inner work and energy exchanges. The moral of the story is you are enough. Don't question your worth based on what other people are telling you. And if you have it within yourself, then other people can't touch you. You'll be unstoppable. There are things that other people can take from you. They can take your money. They can take your materials. There's some things that can be temporary in your life and you don't even know that they're temporary when you first have them. And they can take your job. You can get fired. And so really your worth should not be determined by any of these things, because these things are all at risk of being destroyed. And so your worth would be at risk of being destroyed. Whether or not you're enough enough shouldn't be determined by what you have. It should be determined by who you are. You are enough. People who listen to this podcast obviously want to work on themselves, and so that's a good step to becoming the best version of yourself. And I'd like to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I honestly am so grateful for you and for everyone here. Thank you so much for being a part of this family, and I literally love each and every one of you. You guys are making my dreams come true, and you are incredible, so thank you. Also, I know I was talking about these kind of blue-collar jobs and creative jobs of people who don't think they're enough, and even people who don't have jobs, they think they're not enough. But if you don't have a job, you are enough, and you're okay, and don't equate your worth to work. I've met some pretty successful people, like people who make 6 figures, people who make 7 figures, and they still have this fear that they're not enough. And so I feel like it has nothing to do with who you actually are and everything to do with how you think of yourself and how much you love yourself. Some people have used this "are you enough" motivation to progress in life, and it's this fire under them that gets them to be super ambitious and gets them to get things done. And I feel like that's the healthiest way you can use not being enough as an insecurity in your head. Generally, I feel like you should debunk your insecurities to feel satisfied with life and feel like a happier person, but to each their own. Listen to this podcast with a grain of salt, I guess. I'd just like to say that feeling and embodying that you are enough is saying, here I am, I exist, and this is me. I feel like people can also feel like they're not enough in relationships because of this fear of rejection, this constant fear of failure. You just have to get over that. That just shouldn't control your actions. Do it even when you're scared. Get rid of the fear. Replace this fear with courage. You have the courage to approach someone. You have the courage to do a job and interview at a job that you are not qualified for. You have the courage to start a business. You are enough because another human has done it before, and no human has superpowers that we know of. So you guys have the same abilities and the same parts. If one human can do it, you can do it too. And you are enough to chase your dreams. You are enough to make success. You are enough to find love. You are enough to be happy. You are enough in every single way because you are human and you exist and you are here. And you are here, and the universe, if you believe in God or the universe, they put you here for a reason. And if God didn't want you here, God would take you away. You are supposed to be here. If the universe didn't want you here, the universe would take you away. And if you don't believe in God, you're here. So might as well exist and do things and be enough. Life is too short to be in fear, to worry about all these things that aren't even real. I feel like fear is most of the time anxiety. Anxiety is thinking about things that haven't even happened. Be really realistic with yourself and realize when you have this fear and this anxiety over these things, realize that it doesn't even technically exist in reality. It's more like existing in your head, and challenge these negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Like if you're thinking like, oh, I can't approach this girl because she's going to reject me, just be like, well, I'll approach her, and if she says no, I'll just approach someone else. Or if she says no, she'll probably forget about me in like a week. You shouldn't like live your life in fear because it's not that deep to approach someone or to go after your goals. Humiliating yourself is better than embarrassing yourself. If you're embarrassed to be how you are, that is such a bigger burden than being humiliated by trying something that you didn't succeed at. Like for an example, humiliating yourself would be going up to the guy or the girl or the person or whatever that you like and being like, hey, I like you, do you want to go out? And then they say no. And then you're kind of humiliated in front of them, but then you can move on. An embarrassment would be like you see them, you're like, holy, they're attractive and I want to approach them, but I can't. I'm too embarrassed. I'm not wearing the right shirt. My hair's not done. And I don't know how to speak, and I don't have the right job, and they're not going to like me because I don't have a car, and I don't want to. I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm blushing. I don't know. Oh no, are they looking at me? Oh no, this is so embarrassing. Can't believe I'm being perceived today, and I haven't even had a coffee. this is so embarrassing. That is so much more thinking than just going up to them and speaking to them. If you speak to them, you are free. You can speak to them and then you don't have to think about it ever again. If you don't speak to them, you're going to be wondering your whole life. You're like, what if I just approached that one person at the coffee shop? But I mean, I guess it's not that deep, but it could be for some people. And if that's you, just humiliate yourself so you don't have to be embarrassed. Don't ever question if you are enough for another person, because honestly, let them decide that. You decided you're enough for you, and then they can decide if you're enough for them as well. It's out of your control what other people are thinking and how other people are going to act. So you just shouldn't stress about things that are out of your control and just let it go. Let them decide if they like you, and you just do what you can and put out your initial interest. And this is the same for if you're trying to get into a certain college, or you're trying to get a certain job, or you're trying to do a certain career. Sometimes you need certain skill sets to work certain careers most of the time, and you're not born with those skill sets. And that's kind of why they are careers in the first place, because not everyone can do them. In that case, you might have to learn some things to be qualified for the job. So don't just say, like, I'm enough, I should be able to work this job that I'm not qualified for. But definitely seriously look at your situation and then learn what you need to learn. YouTube is free. Then go to wherever, be prepared, and say, here I am, can I have this? And literally ask for the opportunities you want. Go to the opportunities you want to go to the events, talk to the people. It doesn't matter if you think they're better than you or whatever, because in reality, they're not, and they're probably thinking the same thing. They're probably thinking am I enough? While you're thinking, am I enough? Which is kind of funny how we're all thinking the same things, but we're thinking we're all so different when we're actually extremely similar, because we're all human. Just know that you are enough, and it is okay to learn new skills and have your goals, but you are also enough as you are. And that's just the message that I want to portray in this podcast. I just want you to know that you are enough. All these external things are just noise. If you are happy with how you are, then that's good enough. And that's okay. And this is your life. So if you're happy, that's a win. That's success. If you're not happy with yourself, then it's important to change the things that you want to change about yourself and work on yourself until you are happy. But I think just being really compassionate with yourself and telling yourself things that you would tell another person, and not being so mean to yourself, and being more coming from a place of acceptance with yourself, you're going to realize that you're doing a lot more than you think you are, and you're actually pretty awesome and pretty cool. And you are realizing that you are your people. You are enough for simply existing. And I am proud of you for simply existing. And you can do whatever you want to do. Don't get in your own head about these opportunities, about these things coming up, because you can do these things and you are enough. Whatever it is you're trying to do, you can do it. You're enough and you got this. I believe in you. Just go into the world and do your things, do your positive things, and have a purpose, and don't have this fear of not being enough, because you are enough for simply being here. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, and I appreciate everyone here. If you're new here, I'm Self-Care Big Sis, and please look at the description or the show notes or whatever app you're on. I'm still learning how to do podcasts, but thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate every single one of you, and each of you are valuable, and each of you are enough. And I hope this podcast helps you in some way and uplifts you and inspires you to feel like you are enough and feel like you can do things that you always have wanted to do. And I appreciate everyone here. So thank you so much for listening, and I love you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. You are so valuable and accepted in this family. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow this podcast, Self-Care Big Sis, follow my Instagram and TikTok, Self-Care Big Sis Official, and remember, you are enough and you can do this.